I've been putting bad guys away for 44 years. I've been part of investigating over 1,000 deaths. I've been a part of putting more than 400 murders in prison, and I'm still at it. I'm Tim Corbett. These are my cases. This isn't your typical criminal profile podcast. This is Killer Catchers.
I was blessed enough to be commander of the homicide unit for 17 years. I've handled over 1,000 deaths. It's always we, have put over 425 people in prison for murders and charges similar to that. To my left is Kyle Slater. He is a policeman with the St. Joseph County, Indiana Police Department. To his left is Brian Cook, a sergeant on the St. Joseph County Police Department. Brian just recently left here within about the last 3 weeks, went back to patrol, and Kyle is still over at homicide, and he's an evidence tech. Tonight we're going to talk about Jessica Yost, 23-year-old young lady that was murdered on March 24, 2018 on Oak Road in St. Joseph County, Indiana. It happened about 6:11 a.m. You also hear us talk briefly about Maximilian Kleiman, who pled guilty to that charge and is serving 30 years in the friendly confines of a prison here. You're not going to hear us talk too much about Maximilian because the focus of my podcast, our podcast, is about the victim and the victim's family and the excellent police work and the cooperation of agencies to come to a resolution, a conclusion that was positive, if you can ever say anything positive about a homicide, that this is not an unsolved case. It has an ending and it has an answer, but it never has a conclusion. You'll hear me say that probably every podcast that I'm going to be on. So what I'm going to do, I will interject as always. I'm going to talk to Brian Cook first about the investigation. I also want you to know on the phone is Jessica's father. He's in a different state, and I have to get permission from him since he's in a different state and I'm in Indiana, to be able to record this. Is it okay with you, Jason, if we record this conversation since you're in a different state?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you ever want to interject, just jump in. This is kind of a free-for-all here. It's not a structured environment. It's just cops doing what cops do, telling the truth, and family members doing what they do with their feelings. So, Brian, kind of set the scene a little bit when we went to Oak Road on this homicide.
It was a very cold winter morning. We arrived on scene. Actually, St. Joe County arrived on scene first, and they found Maximilian Kleiman was walking down Oak Road. He was several houses from where he lived and where this took place at. The officers stopped him, and he was bleeding. He had a stab wound, looked like, to his torso area. They called for an ambulance. He was ultimately transported to the hospital. Police officers were able to get preliminarily that he had a girl over and that she had stabbed him, is what he said, and said that then she left in a truck and he had walked down, and that's ultimately what happened. He was transported to the hospital. Police started looking at the house where Max had walked from and found a blood trail. The blood trail led across the street to a local school where the body of Jessica Yost was found, where she had been stabbed to death.
Okay, and then our technicians obviously came out. Kyle, why don't you kind of set the scene on what you found there?
So yeah, I got the call in the early mornings there on the 24th of March, and I drove directly out to the scene so I can kind of assess, what's needed and the legality of, doing a search warrant for the house and stuff like that. When I arrived on scene, I met with initial responding officers, and they had informed me what they had found. Just like Sergeant Cook had said, that they located Max down the street, and then they went to the house and they cleared the house. During that, they found a blood trail led back to the school. So when I arrived, I did a walkthrough of the scene just to kind of, see what I have, and I'm going to formulate a plan in my brain how I'm going to process this scene. So I don't move or collect anything or anything at that point. I just kind of observe of what I see. So first thing I was shown was the blood trail leading up to the school. As I got closer to school, I could see that this was a very gory scene. There was a lot of blood. Jessica Yost was laying on the ground. There was blood spatter, stains all over. There was transfer stains on it. It was almost like she was trying to get away, get into the school, get somebody's attention, knocking on the doors, and until ultimately she collapsed.
I believe that was a Sunday morning early.
I believe so, yes.
How far away was the school from Max, from Max's house?
So Max's house was directly across the street. So I would say it was probably the distance that she had walked from the house or ran. I don't know that answer, but it's about a football field.
Okay, so she went about 100 yards. I know when I got there, there's a lot of coordination to be done, make sure we have proper search warrants and getting with the prosecutor's office and all those kinds of things. Brian, we call him Cookie, so it's going to be Cookie. When you started looking around, did you check with any neighbors? Did you go to the hospital? Where did you go?
I did look around briefly. Then I went straight to the hospital because I wanted to talk to the guy that ultimately left, which was Maximilian Kleiman, and see what he had to say. So I went to the hospital, and I believe while I was on my way to the hospital is when they informed me that they found Jessica. At that time, Jessica had not been found yet, but that was really early in the investigation.
Well, we've kind of set the scene a little bit. What I want to do is talk to her father. And can you describe to me your daughter, memories about her, and how you got the information? This horrible event occurred.
Oh, well, we just recently started talking again, because we had been through some things in our past. And I just recently really just started talking to her again. And I knew about AJ, her boy. He was like 3 years old or something. And, about him getting taken from her or something, I'm not sure. But yes, sir, just civil conversation, basic conversation. And she would tell me about the guys she'd been with and, the abusers and stuff like that, It's basically civil conversation, sir.
All right. How did you find out about what happened to Jessica? Good catch.
Well, I talked to her that Friday night. It was Friday when I talked to her, and she said she had just recently got into a scuffle with someone and her coworker, and she told me about the party, that they was wanting to go to a party, and she didn't really know the guy, but she knew that he played in a band and he played in her club at one time. And I was like, oh my, don't go and this and that, what a dad would do. And tried to talk her out of it just to stay at home on that Friday night. I didn't get the call till Sunday morning is when I found out about it. I think her mother I think she's in New York. She got in touch with my sister-in-law down here. So they got in touch with me through my mom. My mom's the only one that could tell me some news like that, Just feel comfortable enough to tell me.
What was your initial reaction?
Very sick. Then I got very mad. And I just wanted to know who did it, and I knew it was just not the time to think. I couldn't think at the moment. It was a big slap in the face. You see, 2 years ago, so I was 39, so I didn't expect it to happen. But she had called me a few weeks before then and told me some dude had pulled a gun on her, and that was the guy she was staying with. And I said, oh, Lord, it was like 3:30 in the morning, and I told her, don't make him mad anymore and just lock yourself in the room. And so I tried to avoid it. I was trying to get her to come to Mississippi and let me help her get a better job and buy her a vehicle. And she wouldn't leave her little boy, AJ. And I told her that we can just go back later and we'll fight for him when we get a lawyer. But that there happened because she went to the party and, I asked her not to. But she just met the guy. She told me that. And she didn't know him well.
Is the guy Maximilian? Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, she never said his name at that moment, but she said that he played in the band or something when at the club that she worked at.
Okay. All right. Describe her to us. Your memories.
Well, she was born, I was 15 years old, so I was a young father, dad at that. But me and her mother didn't get along great. And she had started dating another guy, and that was Nick's son, which would be Nick Yost. Y'all know about him. That would be his son, Matthew. And I guess they had some connections or a house in Indiana, so they had took my daughter and his daughter, which would be Jessica's sister Mallory, and they went to Indiana. So I've only met my daughter 3 times, and that was when she was little, and then she come down when she was 17. She turned, I think it was like a few days before her 18th birthday, and she wanted to see me and meet me, but it's been a long time. So I was robbed twice from getting to know my daughter. Like I said, she's only 23 years old, so I mean, there was a whole bright future because we started talking again when she was 18. I'd send her money. I never said no. I bought her a car down here and I told her to come get it, but her boyfriend ain't driving it, because I don't believe in, having her boyfriend drive her car around. But the only way that she'd get it, she'd come down here. I wasn't trying to blackmail her or nothing. I just wanted to help her and show her another way. You ain't always got to be fighting or partying or hooping and hollering,
What kind of effect has this had on you and your family?
Man, nobody would talk to me about it, man. They said their condolences and left it as that. And really nobody really talks to me about it. They don't mention it. I'm kind of just carrying this weight around by myself. I'd mention it, and you could see people just not say nothing because I guess they don't know what to say. But I believe in God, and I'm real strong, so I know through Him there's nothing impossible. So at first when it did happen, it drove me buku. Like I wanted to come up there because it took like 9 months to get the guy. So, I was like, okay. So, you got a million thoughts going through your mind. And then with my mother, the mother that I have, she taught me about God and the Bible. So I turned to my answers and my faith. And I just try to stay calm, letting down on the bigger things that's bigger than me. It's hard to handle.
And Jason, this is Cookie, and you had that 9 months that it took us. You had called me several times and always addressed me as Mr. Cook. And how's it going? And I was thinking about coming up, and you always said, "Mr. Cook, I trust you. I know you're going to get him or her." And a couple times I had to talk you out of coming up here because that's just what fathers do. Is that pretty accurate?
Yes, sir. I knew the reason it took a while is because you wanted to stick on him. So I knew that I watch it all the time on television. And, my mama taught me, the devil knows this is end of time. These people out here don't fight no more. They kill you. So there's no reason to fight no more. I was trying to tell her that, I'd throw in my towel, so I can't fight nobody no more. Because you may win that night, but they're going to be back to get you. So I knew that the investigator was doing his job at the best he could, and he wanted the charge to stick on him. So that's why it takes a while to get in there and make sure that it's going to stick with him.
Well, it's never quick enough for the victims' families. It's also not quick enough for us. But you said it very accurately. We have to make sure we're not violating rights. We have to cross all the T's and dot all the I's to get something to stick. And ultimately, he went in, had a set of factual basis for what he did and what we said that he did, and he got hit with 30 years. So, he's out of sight, out of mind. But what I want to do is go back, set more of the stage for us on what that scene was like, what you found in there, what evidentiary things that were able to tie in with what Cookie and his partner Chris Crometer and other people that were involved in helped put together?
So, some important evidence in this scene. One, Max Kleiman called 911, and then he was taken to the hospital. When Cookie and Kronwinter went to the hospital, and I believe you too, Tim, went to the hospital, they recovered his cell phone there, and his cell phone was damaged. It had a cracked screen. You couldn't read it. You couldn't call on it. Couldn't do anything on it. So, but they still obtained that phone as evidence, and we completed a search warrant on that phone. And because of the condition of that phone, we sent it to the Indiana State Police lab to do what they call a chip-off. And what that is they remove the memory card from the actual circuit itself, and sometimes can get the data from the phone from that. It's a long process, and that's part of the reason we had to wait so long before we charged Max, because it took 7 or 8 months just to get that data back from the state police lab. But when we got that back, I remember just going through the data. They sent me digital data from the phone, and I remember a video on that phone. And the video, I think, said it all, what that night was like.
You watched that video, and I remember watching it with you.
Yes.
One time, and
Yes.
that's when we had Chris Funk from the prosecutor's office. He came in, he looked at it, he observed all the evidence that we had, and listened to the statements and things that we have. And here's a perfect example right now. We have St. Joseph County Police, we had Indiana State Police, we had South Bend Police, the prosecutor's office, and any number of other people, including forensic pathologists and everybody else. That's how simple it is when you have cooperation. Yeah, there is no Policeman Hall of Fame. When you retire, you may get a $4 watch and a boot in the ass out the front door, and you're forgot because you're no longer one of us. You're now one of them civilians. So I can't stress enough how much cooperation is important. But back to the video. What was on that video?
That video, when Slater brought me that video and we watched that, I can just remember thinking to myself, "We got you. You're done. We got you. This is what we've been looking for." The video was time-stamped that night, just minutes prior to the 911 call. It was a video of the two of them fighting and arguing. You could see the house was in disarray, and Jessica was holding her own. And you could hear Max, he disappeared, and then he returns, and you heard a gun racking. And Kyle, you might have more memory on exactly what. I mean, he just, in this demonic voice, Max was saying things, and Kyle, you probably know better than I do.
So yeah, in the video, probably 3/4 of the way through, you can almost hear as if Max, he has a phone in his pocket or something, and he's running downstairs, and then you hear a gun rack. I mean, that's a sound when you hear it. It makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, and then all of a sudden you hear a big commotion, like a fight going on, and what I put together is the living room area. He makes several comments in that video that I'm going to quote, "You're going to die, bitch." And he almost in, like, I would say, a demonic type voice, a very loud, deep voice. He would say, "You ready? You ready? You ready to die?" It makes you cringe. It was, we watched that, and that was, I think, a big piece of evidence in the case.
Well, that was huge.
I think that's what put us over the hump.
Well, Max, or Maxie, I don't know probably Maxie is what they're calling him now, but that might have been his nickname. I'm not for sure, but I know he seemed to think like the world revolved around his personal belly button, and I'm pretty sure when he arrived at the prison that he's at, he thought there would be a mint on his pillow and a maitre d' or somebody to carry his luggage to his cell. But you have to understand the mentality of somebody like this and what the Achilles tendon is on them that you have to attack. You have to know what your prey is, and you have to go after it. And Max was all about Max. He was a victim of everything. Everybody was out to get him, and he thought he was smarter than everything. And of course, we had listened to some phone calls and talked to people. And matter of fact, once again, one of my snitches came forward and let me know that Max is going to have a real tough time up at the jail because he's very standoffish. He's very aristocratic. He's an egotist, and he just seemed to think like he could strut around the hen house and he was the only rooster there. I think he found out a little bit different a few other times, but that's up to the other people to find that kind of stuff out. But anyway, that's kind of the background on Max. I know when we went to the hospital, Cookie and I and somebody else, and when we first went up there, one of his relatives was extremely boisterous to us and telling us to get the F out of here and you're not going to F and do this. And it was just one thing after another. And finally yelled out the magic words, he has an attorney, so we had to vacate. But with that in mind and the way we were treated by her, it just gave us more push to want to do the right thing. Not that we need a push, but that just increased it even more. And it didn't stop during preliminary hearings and trying to stare at us like you're about 115 pounds soaking wet. You're not going to intimidate anybody. I don't know why you're wasting your time, but it was easy to see where Max got some of that from. But once we got into the investigation, it was what happened with the interviews and all that.
Originally, when I went to the hospital the night of the incident, they had Max in a trauma room, and he had some cut marks on him that appeared to me to be self-inflicted, as there was you see pre-marks around it, and the doc said they would be going in for exploratory surgery to see where the stab marks and everything, how deep and bad they were. Talking with the doc, asking, are they life-threatening? He said, you never know, if anything's life-threatening. At that point, I gave Maximilian a chance and said, if you die, do you want me to know what happened? It's a dying declaration. And he said, yes, I do. I recorded it. And Max was, he had just said that this chick that he had met believed that she was Indian, and said that you could see, like the devil in her eyes, you could see that she was very deep, and said that they started fighting over he didn't even know what, and then she cut him.
Did that story start off with Once Upon a Time because the evidence and everything else didn't match up with that?
Yeah, it should have started with Once Upon a Time. Okay. And he said that she had left the scene and got in a pickup truck with somebody and took off. And then I believe it was the next day or day after. And then at that point, Max had very long hair. And it was the next day or day after when we went back up to talk to him again with that female you mentioned. And his hair was miraculously cut very short. Nobody could explain that, but that's another story.
Well, I think common sense explains it. If you're laying there, you have the potential of death. I think the last thing you need is a haircut so you look, like you're going for a glamour shot. I think.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle, we're back to you again because you're at the scene. Search warrants are drawn up. Chris Funk is doing his thing, and that dude Funk has always been a stud for us. He's, he goes way out of his way to help, and you can't push enough on him. He just takes it and takes it and takes it. All that stuff's done. You're at the scene. Who's your partner?
My partner at that time was Jonathan Gray of the South Bend Police Department. He's back on patrol at this time. So to go into the scene itself, the house where the incident occurred, after we got the legal right to be in there by completing a search warrant, I did my initial walkthrough in that house kind of the same way I did the outside. I just went in and observed. And I mean, from the first step in the door, you could tell something was wrong in that house. I entered through the side door on the north side of the house, and right there is like a transition, like a stairway. You go up to the right to the main level, and you go down the basement if you go straight. On that stairway and on the stairs was already several bloodstains. Probably the most heaviest actually in the house. When you go up the stairs, you go up to the kitchen area, and just inside the kitchen on the right on a table was a knife. Had blood all over it. We later sent that knife to the Indiana State Police lab, and they indicated that that blood on that knife only returned to Jessica Yost. Nothing on there returned to Max Kleiman. Going further, going through you can see there's disarray in the kitchen. There's shoes all over the place. There's stuff all over the ground. You start getting closer to the adjoining room, which is the living room and hallway area, and you're starting to see some blood stains a little bit. There's some hair, so you can definitely tell there was a fight. There's some hair in there that looked to be Jessica Yost, and then some of it actually looked to be Max Kleiman's. Then once you get in the living room, and then the living room is in complete disarray. Some things to note in there. There was an AK-47 in there, a drum magazine that had been separated was on the floor, and then there was a live round for that AK-47 in the living room as well. The couch cushions were all over the place. There was actually another knife in there, but there was no blood found on that knife. You could definitely tell, and then you keep leading back down the hallway into the bathroom area, and you look in the bathroom, and there's one of the towel racks was bent and pulled off. Actually, the pole for it was in the kitchen, and that kind of goes back to listening to the video, and you can kind of hear at one point that Jessica locks herself in a room, it seems like, and he's trying to get in. And I'm assuming that's that bathroom. And that's probably where the fight probably started, and then it just led through the rest of the house.
Was there a round shot in the basement?
No, so preliminary, when Max had actually called 911, he first said he was shot. And then it later determined that he was stabbed.
Right.
And then part of his story, again, was that he had ran down in the basement, grabbed his gun, and shot into the air, or shot into the ceiling.
And he had told me that at the hospital during that dying declaration.
So that's where he said he thought he might have shot her, but it determined, from the pathologist that she had a stab wound to her chest. I searched for hours looking for any type of bullet strike in the ceiling, in the walls, anything down that basement. Did not locate anything, and I kept going over just because of that story, and it was probably overkill, but I just kept going over and looking. There was a spent shell casing down there, but it was old. It had dust on it. I ended up collecting that as evidence, submitting it to Ray Wolfenbarger with the South Bend Police Ballistic Lab, and he looked at it, and he probably couldn't say for sure, but it didn't look like it had been shot. It just was a loose.
Well, I think the video speaks for itself as well. There was no gunshots heard during that struggle and fight. So,
What kind of evidence did you end up taking out of there? You had a phone eventually, right? The one you talked about.
Yeah, so the phone actually Cookie collected at the hospital, but there was several items. There was blood stains, throughout the whole scene. The knife was very important. The other knife in the living room, the gun, the magazine, the live cartridge. There was other things. There was some marijuana, and definitely a thing to note is when they looked at the body of Jessica, at the scene, you could tell she had she gets her nails done, and she had the very long, and they were golden color, her nails. And when you go inside, you look at the stairway and then throughout the kitchen and the living room, found several broken fingernails. And I'm not talking like tips and the small ends. I'm talking about half your nail being ripped off.
She fought a hell of a fight.
So she fought, and there was a hell of a struggle because you can, imagine half your nail getting ripped off. I was actually able, when I went to the autopsy, I was able to take those 3 nails that we collected from the crime scene and be able to match them up with her, so they were for sure hers.
Okay. And then that's one scene. That's just inside. You still have the outside scene. So we're at Wilson School. Obviously, we can't just go onto property and start doing what we want to do. We have to get permission or a permit to search signed or a search warrant to even begin the process where she's laying. Which scene did you do first?
So I started with the outside. I always like to start outside, work my way in, because when you're outside, you're dealing with the elements. It's, March, who knows if it's going to snow or rain or be sunny in Indiana. So I start with the outside and get that done first because it's more contained on the inside. So with the outside of the scene, the first thing we did was we documented it with digital photography. And the evidence on the outside of the scene, it was primarily, it was a blood trail. It was a drip trail that led from that house all the way to that school. The bleeding became heavier. There was definitely evidence showing that she was trying to get in. You could see handprints on the door, and then she had gone around the corner, and you could tell she had just been standing there and just bleeding until she had no more blood to.
Well, you're very detail-oriented, eloquent about what you're saying. The bottom line of the whole thing is Jessica fought for her life. She tried to run away from her attacker, from her killer. She was able to get away far enough, and she succumbed to her injuries, and those injuries were horrific. I can honestly say in my 45 years, that was probably one of the bloodiest scenes that I've observed. And to think that 9 months was spent putting together a case that if he would have been man enough to stand up and say, I was a coward, I killed a woman, and I need to pay the price for it. But you have to put your own relatives on his side of the family through believing in the once upon a time story that you're telling, making them spend money, making them maybe say a lot of things and do a lot of things that they perhaps wouldn't have done if they knew the exact truth. But that's the path of a coward. And Jessica was a young lady that had a little bit of a tough time in life, but did not deserve anything close to what she received. And I'm just proud of the unit for what they did. Now, we've gone through the evidence. There was a lot more obtained. Obviously, there has to be an autopsy, even though we know the cause of death in our own eyes, in our own mind, in our own heart. We still have to prove that wound was the wound that killed her. And the reason being, a defense attorney is going to say, well, how do you know she didn't die of a heart attack 5 minutes before she died from the stab wound? How do you know a traumatic head wound from a gunshot, the person didn't have a stroke or throw a blood clot? And, there's always going to be the what ifs. That's not what we deal in. We deal in the truth, so we have to go through the autopsy process. It's a disgusting thing to see. It's a disgusting thing you have to go through, but it's a necessity that has to be done. We just absolutely have to do it. Be thankful that you don't have to see it. Be thankful you don't have to live through that, because that's something you never ever forget, especially when you're talking about a baby this big. It's horrible, but we have people that can fight through it and live through it and continue on with what they're doing and don't quit. So now we're to the process of all the pieces have been given to Chris Frank. We have our big meeting, much like what you're seeing here, and everybody's telling their side of the story, and sometimes there's some arguments, and sometimes there's some words said that there's probably not a big enough bleep machine to bleep them out right now, but that's what cops and that's what prosecutors do. We argue points, and sometimes we win, sometimes we don't, but you at least get your side said. So now we're having this meeting, and Frank gave the thumbs up. Where did we end up going to grab Max? Remember, Cook?
We went to Fort Wayne, where he was held up in an apartment. I wanted to touch base real quick on Jessica. I knew Jessica when she was younger. When I was a beat cop in homicide for 11 years before that, when she was younger in grade school and junior high school, Jessica was ornery. And her father, or stepdad, whatever he was, Mr. Yost, could not control her. I was sent out there one time to calm her down, and I was able to. I put her in the car, I talked to her. So she ended up being okay with me. I was called out there several times just to calm her down when her parents couldn't. So I knew her when she was a little girl. What I'd like to hit on is another reason that Max, those marks on him were self-inflicted, because I know Jessica, if she would have got a hold of a knife, she would have done what she wanted to do. She would not have let anybody take it from her. That's how mean and a fighter that little girl was.
Well, we've seen suicides like that where there's called hesitation marks. Where
Yes.
Somebody may practice a cut and do different things until finally they they're successful at what they started
Yes.
out with. So to me, I'll say it, you don't have to. They look like hesitation marks to me. They look like practice pokes, and
Absolutely.
did it so many times, and finally now I have to create this scenario and stabbed himself enough. Now I've got the stab wound. Now I have to create the story, and when you start adding things up, it just didn't add up to be a plus for Max, and tragic for him as it may be. But we're going down to Fort Wayne. We loaded up the troops and heading down to Fort Wayne. Got with the cops down there, and go ahead with it.
We had, like you said, we arranged with the police officers in Fort Wayne. I believe we had everybody from the ATF, local police department, sheriff department, the marshals, and we all worked together, coordinated a plan. We knew where he lived. The marshals in the Fort Wayne PD had watched. They knew what vehicle he had. They had been watching him. We got down there before daylight. They kind of had a routine because they had been watching him, knew when he left for work. And we were down there, and as he was heading out the door, we stormed in and took him.
And then he came back to St. Joseph County.
St. Joseph County, where he was locked up, and he had his defense attorney, and we had told him what they're charged with. And after his attorney had seen our factual basis, he pled guilty, where he had to stand in front of the court and admit what he did.
Well, there's another case right there. Fort Wayne PD, U.S. Marshals, with all the other police departments that we've already talked about, again, working together, and Max didn't get hurt, no cops got hurt. Good outcome in the arrest scenario. I haven't looked up where Max is at, really don't care. He's in prison in Indiana. If you want to look it up, you can. He's out of my head. Mr. Yost, do you have anything else you want to say? We're kind of winding down and wrapping up, and I'll give you the last word. So kind of prepare your thoughts if you would. So you got anything, Kyle, that you want to?
Just a couple things, yeah. One, to follow up a little bit on the test quote thing, just evidentiary wise. We did collect Max's clothing from the hospital, and there were several small, like 5 or 6 small holes around the area where the big holes were where he was stabbed. Also, photographs of him were taken at the hospital, and same thing, there were several small little superficial marks, in that same area. And what else, there were some other departments that actually responded to this. So St. Joe County Police, Roseland Police, Pokagon Tribal Police, they all responded to this call. And I think they did a very good job at, one, making sure Max got to the hospital, treated stab wounds, two, clearing the house, and three, having, the right sense to follow that blood trail and find Jessica. Because without them finding her, who's to say that Monday morning those little kids didn't go to Wilson School and find that girl laying in front of that school? I don't think a kid wants to see that.
No.
So,
again, great team effort. I know in homicide, I worked for you as the commander for almost 10 years, I think a little over 9 years, and you and I ran together a lot. And that unit, we take every case personally. Every person is a family member to us. It's not a number. This one really hit home because I knew Jessica prior to. We just police to do this job, homicide, they have a passion. They love people. They want to see closure, and we do not like the narcissistic people like Max Kleiman who think they're better than the system. And that's what we're here for.
Well,
and bringing closure to families. I was very excited to call Mr. Stringer and let him know that we have him locked up.
Yes, sir, I was too.
Jason, go ahead.
Sir?
Go ahead. You're up.
Well, it's a very hard pill to swallow. I don't think I can ever forget it, and I don't think I'm going to ever forgive him. 30 years is a long time. I done added it up. I'll be 71. He'll be 56 if the Lord permits us the future. So I don't know. It really sucks. It really changed my life. Made me worse in a little blaze, and it made me, just realize, how short life really is. I wish I could have did more for her. I wish I could have been there to get him instead of him getting her, to protect her. I don't know what the future holds, honestly. I'm still going through stuff, 2 years, it don't matter if it was 12 years. You never forget. It still angers you, So like I said, not have the mother I had, I'd have probably been up there in those 9 months there. And because I had other guys calling me, like her uncle, Tommy Dennis. He's from Mobile, and he's labeled as schizophrenia. So he's pretty much chased me with a butcher blade, and he had stabbed someone because they stole his Nintendo game back in the early 90s. So he's pretty rowdy man. And had another guy, which is Nick Yost's son. Right after that happened, he went up there, and he walked around the neighborhood and was on the phone with me. So I could say that he wasn't safe out here. And in 30 years from now, let's just hope he don't make it that long. We have to let God handle things that's bigger than you, or either end up in jail yourself. There's consequences with actions. Like my dad always told me, age help you get wisdom. So I've been in prison twice. So I've been in trouble too. And, I just wish I've had second chances is what I'm trying to say. So every day I wake up, I just think that I pray to God that I wish that she had a second chance. So I asked my mom, I talked to my mom about it, and she's a true Jesus woman. And, day and night I see this woman read the Bible, and she prays, and she'd have snot running down her nose, but that won't hurt her prayer, it won't. She's still praying. She's not wiping that. That's how hard she prays. So she may have told me, that's maybe, that's where God may want her right now, because not to face that what's coming to us, out here, because Armageddon is coming. We can't forget about God's war when he returns, and he's going to take care of all the people out here. So, even in the Bible, they say forgive, but that's something that I'm going to have to talk to God about. That's going to take about 30 years, like I said. I probably won't make it to 71, so he's better off in jail. I'm going to close it with that there, and maybe he'll get, karma in the penitentiary.
Hey, Jason, I also want to thank you too for calling me and confiding in me and talking with me through the months and years, and I feel like we've become friends. And just for trusting our unit and believing that we could do it.
Yes, sir. I really appreciate you staying in touch with me too. And they all tell me that I wasn't much of a father. Like I said, any man, can be a dad. It takes a real special man to be a father. So I wasn't much of one in the past, but I ain't gonna beat myself up, because in the end, I had her, and she knew who the strongest one was, and it wasn't all my fault. And she understood that when she had her own son, and then she was still out there, and then he got taken. Then she really. So that takes you going through things to realize that, when you're young, I'm pretty sure we all wish we didn't do some things. So, when I was 23, I didn't listen to my dad either. And I just can't understand how I got so many second chances and still alive. And then she's 23 and then she's dead because of one stupid guy that can control his anger. And he don't have God in his heart, because God, you don't kill human, you kill animals, and only if you're going to eat them. That's how we do it down south. So I don't know about all this other, violence that's going on, but I don't ask myself why anymore, because of the mother I have. I know why, because Jesus' return, it's Armageddon's coming, and we're living in the end of time. And, I think we all realize that by now, so.
Well, Jason, don't spend 1 minute turning your own feet around and kicking your own ass. Don't do that. You can't let this guy live rent free in your head. I say that all the time, and I mean it. What if? What if you had put on the hazmat suit or before you were exposed to the virus? What if? You can't do that. You did everything that was the right decision at that time, and don't look back on it. And I appreciate you talking to us. We're very proud of what we do. It was an honor and privilege, I know, for me to serve as commander of the homicide unit for 17 years and be a cop for 45 years. That's why after I retired, I'm still doing unsolved homicides. I hate the term cold case. I hate the term anything close to that. I just absolutely can't stand it, because people give up when they hear cold, and it's not cold. We're going to be here again and release this next Tuesday, and we're going to keep going and keep going and keep going. We're going to let everybody know what it's like to be a cop, how it feels, what goes on. I want to thank all first responders, all vets and active service people. Appreciate everything you've done for us. You're the reason that we're able to have things like this to get the truth out. Thank you.